Hey guys, so you're going to be getting your notes over this video today, and hopefully some of it will make sense. If not, I will be back Monday and we will pick up where we left off and make sure you guys feel really comfortable and confident with solving equations using a chart. So yesterday that's what we talked about. Today we're really not learning anything new. We're just going to add in talking about the types of functions that we're solving, which you guys already know a little bit about. So, we're going to skip the warm-up. We're just going to go right to the notes, and Mr. Hernandez is going to give you guys the answer key to the worksheet you did last night, so you can check your answers and see if you're understanding it, and he would be happy to answer any questions you guys might have from the homework as well. So we're going to go right into this, this part 2 note section. Okay, so we're just going to talk about the types of equations that we're going to encounter. And so let's list them. You guys already know some of them. The first one is linear equations. I'm going to zoom in. Okay, the first one is linear equations. So when I solve a linear equation, I have just a plain x in the equation. Actually, number 1 is an example of this. You can see that there's just an x. It's not squared. There's no square root. It's just a plain old x. That would be a linear equation. The next type of equation we're going to use in this class, or solve in this class, is a quadratic equation. So a quadratic equation has an x squared. This is something we actually took notes on in our last section. Sometimes it has more than just x squared. Sometimes we have something like x plus 2 quantity squared. If you see a 2 as an exponent, if you see a squared, then that is a quadratic equation. Okay, so then the next one is a cubic. So it's a lot like quadratic, except instead of having the 2 as the exponent, we're going to have a 3 as an exponent. So x cubed is what you will see. Again, you might have something like x plus 1 quantity cubed. If you have the exponent as a 3, then you have a cubic function. The next one is going to be a square root function. So you guys have seen square root functions before. It's no different than what you've seen. It's just going to have a square root. So sometimes just the x has the square root. Other times there's more than one thing under the square root. But if you see that square root symbol, then you know it's a square root equation. Let's see, I'm kind of running out of room, but we also want to talk about cube root as well as exponential and absolute value. We're not going to really be solving absolute value in this class, however. So we'll do the next one as a cube root, because that is definitely one, you can't see that. That's definitely going to be one that you guys see in this class. So let's try that again. Here we go. We got a cube root. A cube root, it looks like a square root, but it has a 3 in the upper left-hand corner. So again, that's a cube root equation. And we'll get to exponential in another lesson. So right now, the ones we want to really see are going to be the linear, quadratic, cubic, square root, and cube root. That's what you're going to see most of the next few days. So we're going to start right away with doing some solving. So like I said before, this is a linear equation number 1. And we know it's linear because there's just an x. So when it says type, we're just going to write down linear. Now solving for x, you guys have solved problems like this before. At least a lot of you have. So you can do it traditionally or you can use the chart. I want you guys to practice using the chart. So when I set up my chart, I make my t-chart so I have my left side and my right side. I'm just going to go through what's happening to x and in what order. So what's happening to x? First we're multiplying by 3, then we're adding 5, and that is going to equal 14. Okay, so that was going down on my operations of x side. Now going back up on my inverses of x side, I'm going to start with 14, and opposite of plus 5 is going to be minus 5. Opposite of times 3 is going to be divided by 3. Doing these operations, these inverses, is going to get me my answer. Okay, so 14 minus 5, that gives me 9. And then 9 divided by 3, that's going to give me 3, and that's my answer. Not too bad. Moving over to the right, number 2 is a quadratic equation. Quadratic equations have 2 answers. I really want that to resonate with you guys. Quadratic equations have 2 answers. A lot of the times they're going to be plus or minus answers. And this example we're about to do is going to be that case. So let's go ahead and make our chart. We're going to start by squaring x. That's the first operation. Minus 2 equals 23. All right, guys, going up the inverse side, we start with 23. Opposite of minus 2 is going to give me a plus 2, and the opposite of squaring is going to be square rooting. Biggest thing for this problem is to put a plus or minus by that square root. Because when we take the square root on the right-hand side of our chart, we have to take both the positive and the negative answer. So let's go through this. 23 plus 2, that's going to give me 25. So I'm going to square root 25, and I get the answer of plus or minus 5. So there's the plus or minus. This, if you're confused as to what plus or minus means, it just means that I have 2 answers, positive 5 and negative 5. But you can just write it as plus or minus. So that was an example of a quadratic equation. We're going to move on to number 3. This is a cubic equation. How did I know it was cubic? I knew it was cubic because of the x cubed. Let's chart it up. Okay, what's happening to x? Guys, all that's happening to x is that we're cubing it, and that equals 27. So on my inverse side, I'm going to do the opposite of cubing, which we just kind of talked about, is cube root. This is something we actually talked about one of the first couple days of school, and hopefully you guys remember in your calculators how to cube root a number. So we just have to take the cube root of 27, and that answer is 3. So x equals 3. Okay. Moving on to number 4. This is a square root function. Square root because I see a square root. So now, after Unit 2, you guys know what the graph of a square root function looks like, and now you know what the equation of a square root function looks like. Also, you know how to solve a square root equation, so that's pretty cool. You guys know a lot about all these functions. It's all good fun. So let's go ahead and chart it up. We got x, what's happening to x first, and in what order? Going down, we start with the square root. We're square rooting x, we're subtracting 4. That's going to give me 2. So those are my order of operations, and going back up, my inverses. I'm going to start with 2. I'm going to add 4, and opposite of square root is squaring. You don't have to worry about plus or minus in this one. You only worry about plus or minus when the square root is on the right side or the inverse side of the chart. So for this one, I'm going to do 2 plus 4, which is 6. Take 6 and square it, and that gives me a nice round figure of 36. So my answer is x equals 36. Excellent. Okay. Frankie, Frankie, stop. Frankie, shh, shh, shh. Okay, that was my roommate's dog, Frankie. Sorry about it. Oh, we're done with the page. Awesome. Okay, guys. Let me just pause this for a second so you guys can take a look at those notes and make sure you got them all down. We're going to move on to page 2. All right. On to page 2, just more equations. I'm not sure that I'm going to go through every single one right now, you guys. I will have the answer key provided for you guys so you can fill in the rest. I'm just going to talk through a couple more. You guys should be good to go. Again, we're going to pick up with this again on Monday. All right, guys, so let's start with a cube root function because I don't think we've done one like that yet. So we got number 5. How did I know this was a cube root function? Simply because I saw this symbol that I just drew in. I saw a cube root. Let's chart it up. Okay. Starting with x, what am I doing first to x? I'm cube rooting it. Then I'm adding 1, and that equals 3. So on the other side, inverses, I'm going to take 3, subtract 1. Guys, the opposite of cube root is just going to be cubing. Okay, so 3 minus 1 is going to give me 2. Plug in that 2. 2 cubed is 8. Now, some of you might want a good way to check your answer. And we talked about this on Monday. It's Friday today. No, we didn't talk about it Monday. We talked about it on Wednesday. All you need to do to check your answer, you guys, is plug it in. I'll show you that really fast with this one. Take your original equation, and for x, plug in 8. This is how you can check your work. What's the cube root of 8? Well, it's 2 plus 1, and sure enough, 3 equals 3. So there's always, always, always a way in math to verify that you're getting the right answer. It's a quick check. Sometimes you can even do it in your head. Great way to make sure that you're doing these problems right. So that was number 5, a cube root. I love number 6. This one always throws people off, but I'm promising you it's really not that bad. So let's look at that. It's the fraction that throws people off. This is actually linear. It's linear because x is just by itself. Okay, there is no squared, there is no cube root, it's just a plain old x, so it is linear. Now let's set up our chart and ask what's happening to x and in what order. So what's happening to x first? Guys, that fraction means to divide. So first I'm dividing by 5, subtracting 1, and that's going to give me 5. Going up my inverse side, I start with 5, I'm going to add 1. Opposite of divided by 5 is times 5. And now I'm just going to solve. So 5 plus 1 is 6. Okay, 6 times 5 is 30. Quick mental check, plugging in for x, 30 divided by 5 is 6, minus 1 is 5. I know I did it right. Again, that's just me doing my checking in my head. Very, very quick, easy check to see if I did my problem correctly. Alrighty. Almost there, guys. All right. I'm going to go ahead and skip to another quadratic equation. And I'm really liking the look of number 9. So let's go ahead and solve number 9. Solving for x, guys. I see the x squared. I know automatically this is a quadratic equation. Okay, so let's go ahead and chart it up. Very first thing happening to x is always going to be my exponents, which is squaring. Unless we have parentheses. We always go in the order of operations. So first we're squaring x, then we're dividing by 3, adding 6, and that gives me 9. Let's go up the inverse side. We start with 9, subtract 6, multiply by 3, and square roots. I'm going to draw in the plus or minus now because I can't forget to plus or minus when I solve a quadratic equation. Okay, so 9 minus 6, that's going to give me 3. 3 times 3 is going to give me 9. And I'm going to square root 9. That gives me plus or minus 3. So I have two answers, positive 3 and negative 3. Guys, I wrote it this way that I'm circling for a reason. I just want to show you that's another way to write plus or minus. You could write out both positive 3 and negative 3, or I would also accept just a simple plus or minus 3. Okay, so in terms of this page, you guys, I know I didn't go through all the examples, but in terms of time, I don't want to talk too much on this video, so we're going to pause it there. I do want you guys to practice on your own. On the next page, there is a practice page, and that's exactly what I want you guys to do. Alright guys, so I've now imported your homework from last night onto this video, and I'm going to be done talking in a minute, but I do want to go through just a couple of the more challenging problems from your homework last night. We'll call it quits, I'll stop talking, and you can work on your homework for the weekend. So here we go, this was your homework from last night. The types of problems that I would like to work on right now are the ones that have the squared, so it's a quadratic, but there's something in the parentheses, okay? That's when we have to branch off. So I talked about this in class, and I think that that's probably the most challenging type of problem. So we're going to go through it right now. Alright guys, so what's happening to x and in what order? Inside the parentheses, what's happening to x is first I'm subtracting 7, then I'm squaring it. And that's going to give me an answer of 169. Okay, so on my inverse side, I have to start with 169. Opposite of square is square root. Opposite of minus 7 is plus 7. So now, I'm going to just go through those motions. Square root of 169. Here's the craziest part, guys. Not crazy. I don't even know why I said that. But we have to do the plus or minus, okay? So that means that I'm going to get two answers when I take the square root of 169. I'm going to get a positive 13. I'm also going to get a minus 13. So I like to draw almost like a branch like that so that I remember that for my final answer, I have to take 7, and then I have to add 13 to get 20. That's one of my answers. I also have to subtract 13 and get negative 6. So I have two answers here. X equals 20 and negative 6. Okay? I'm going to do another example like this. And with squaring, for right now, guys, that's the only time we need to do plus or minus, square rooting. Okay? So let's go ahead and try that same type of problem again. Ooh, okay, not on this page. We'll go to the next page, and we'll do one more problem like that. If you do have other questions from the homework, there is a key provided for you guys, and Mr. Hernandez can answer some quick questions if he's willing. Oh, okay. So we're going to go to the next slide. And here we are. So let's see. I think probably the most challenging one on this page is definitely number 17. So we'll go through that one with you, and we'll call it a day. Okay. Guys, again, this is a quadratic because I have the squared. Some people get confused because they see that x by itself in the parentheses, but the key is seeing that there is a squared in general. That means it's a quadratic. So I'm starting with x. Guys, I'm adding 3, and then I'm squaring. Then it's plus 6 equals 10. Perfect. Up the inverse side, 10. Opposite of plus 6 is minus 6. Opposite of squaring is square rooting. Opposite of plus 3 is minus 3. I'm going to draw in that plus or minus so I don't forget. And now I'm going to solve. 10 minus 6 is 4. Square root of 4 is plus or minus 2. So I just branch it off right away. Take the negative 3 and add 2, I get negative 1. That's one of my answers. Take the negative 3 and subtract 2, and I get negative 5. So x is going to be negative 5. You can write and, or you can put a comma. So it's -1 and -5 is my final answer. Okay, so hopefully after seeing a couple examples like this, you can start to understand what happens when I have to branch off. It's only when I'm taking the square root and there's an additional step afterwards. If the square root is my very last step on the inverses, you can just do plus or minus. So that's it for today's lesson. Kind of long. Hopefully you followed along a little bit. On Schoology, the notes answer key is up. So go ahead and you can copy in the rest of your notes. I would like you guys to do some partner practice on that practice page. And after you guys get maybe 5 problems done on that page, you can check in with Mr. Hernandez and you can grab the homework, which is worksheet C for the weekend. Have a good weekend, guys. Sorry I couldn't be there today. And if you're going to homecoming, have so much fun. I will be there. So hopefully I'll see some of you. See you guys.